doing something with indigenous people there, and we have some people in Hawaii who are also using esports for that topic, and we will connect you with them. And therefore, thank you for that, and we are looking forward to it, Line.
Thank you. So this is a quite big topic, as you see from my headline, Games and Esports in Indigenous Educational Contexts. But the truth is that it's not a lot of research done on this. So that means already lower your expectations on how academic this will be, because I will try to do, because there is quite a lot of research done on using games in indigenous contexts. Most of the research there is on just single cases, and a lot of the research is also overwhelmingly positive, showing all the different possibilities and advantages of using games to foster learning, to help the learners. But in esports, there are almost nothing. And if you add educational contexts that I have done, well, I don't really know what's left. If you know of anyone who does something specifically in educational contexts about these topics, I'm always interested to know, because there's not a lot. So I have still set out to see if I can get an overview over what is actually there. And today I will focus mostly on the esports part, using examples from how games are used as well, because I believe that there is a correspondence here. And the way one can use esports it can be similar to the way one can use games and different types of needs and advantages. This will all make sense eventually, I hope. So in this presentation, I have a quite broad understanding of educational contexts. That means that I will also use research that is done in not like traditional educational contexts, because you can think about spare time activities as part of the educational contexts. And I will argue, perhaps particularly for this group, Indigenous peoples group, because you have aspects such as culture and gaming and language that I will come back to later. I was quite inspired on Wednesday and yesterday as well, of course, but I thought about the why, because one of the presentations talked about how we rarely talk about the why we do research, what is it good for. So I thought I would begin with the why in this presentation. In order to do so, I had to take a slight detour from the topic. I hope it will provide some meaningful context, because I think it is relevant to describe why I am doing this and what is it actually good for. I am not Indigenous myself, which requires some extra explanation. This is me. Here I am trying to teach teachers how to use games. I use many different games. I use Minecraft as one of them, because many schools in Norway have the game included in Office subscriptions. So if you have it, why not use it? And what I want them to do, so I teach future teachers and I teach teachers. And I mainly teach literature and stories. In my opinion, games, movies, comic books is part of that. So I always force my students to play games, read comic books, watch movies as part of the curricula. So this is me outside here using games with teachers, because I want them to use the games as part of the learning and not just and now we are finished learning, so now you get the reward of playing the game. I use it specifically to teach about Sami topics and perspectives. The reason I do that is because in the new Norwegian curricula, there is a heightened focus on Indigenous peoples and Sami in the curricula. It is stated in the overall value section, and it is included in all subject plans except mathematics. I don't know why it's not in mathematics, but it is not. So it's something that all teachers need to teach about and include. But many of them have no clue how to do so. So I had this great idea. I thought, why not use games? So you can have this experience of taking part of something. So now I thought, I'm talking to this audience, many of you international, you might have no clue what I'm talking about when I'm saying Sami people. So I thought it would be beneficial to include a map. I like maps. So you can get an overview over Sami people. So Sami people are Indigenous people traditionally residing in Sápmi, which is the North Sami name for the geographical area. So it crosses the national borders of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. I will say something more afterwards, but not a lot, just what you need to understand what I'm talking about. But it is included. But what you can notice here that I don't know if you know on this map where we are, but we are in the south, so clearly not part of the traditional Sami area, which might explain why my students also know very little about this topic. And then, of course, one has to mention that there is a long history of Norwegianization, active assimilation politics as well, which you have across Sápmi. And schools and education was an important tool in this assimilation process. So education also has a vital role in working against it. Okay, so because of this idea that I had about using games, I started a collaboration project with the Sami University of Applied Sciences, which lies in the north of Norway in Kautokeino. And one of the results is that we have created this Minecraft game, because as I told you, schools have Minecraft, why not use it? And also, I can build this. I don't need to hire anyone to do fancy programming things for me. We build everything ourselves. I won't do many things, talk about this a lot more, but this is an example. I will come back to it. So the reason why I wanted to include this is because now I will go into more the esports part as well. So as I mentioned, I have this cooperation with the Sami University of Applied Sciences. It's in Kautokeino, and this is the local high school that is in Kautokeino. They have an esports specialization. It started in 2020. It's at the local, I wrote it, sorry, in Sami. It's the Sami High School for the Sami High School and Reindeer School. So they have a quite traditional topics as well, and they have esports. And I think this is great. But nobody has written about it. It is located next to one of the first Sami academic institutions, and there's esports there, and nobody has written about it. So it exists. It also exists as some recreational group. You have the Sami gamers. They organize events for people specifically in Finnmark, which is also located in the north of Norway, where they organize esports events. They have teams. Sometimes they will be part of different types of competitions. You can see, here it's in Norwegian, it's 6 divisions. So the Sami gamers, they are quite new, that group. The issue here is not necessarily how well or not well they're doing, but they exist. Okay, so when we talk about this, we know that there are esports in Sami context and Indigenous context. There are also Indigenous esports groups internationally. But we know that it might be a very specific context. Of course, Indigenous people can partake in esports as part of the national or international scene. But what if it's in specific contexts? What happens then? You cannot really just transfer one model and then use it and think that everything will be the same. This was also mentioned on Wednesday, like the results are not necessarily transferable. You might experience that you have different needs. And this is actually a little bit described in the literature. So the first one here is, the second one here is about establishing esports milieu in Africa, Indigenous esports milieu there. And here it says quite clearly that when you use esports as a model, it will have to be adapted to Indigenous culture, sustainability, and scalability. This will be the same for the Sami population. If you use it in a Sami context, then the scalability might not be that it's big, it might be that it's small. It might be language communities, they might be even smaller. You might have esport team for 3 people because you don't really have more people to take from. Here also the quote on the bottom here is about the Indian esport, establishment of esports in India. The development of Indian esports requires a comprehensive understanding of the Indigenous gaming milieu, traditions and inclinations, and a readiness to explore and adjust. So the same, it's not necessarily transferable from one context to the next. We have already done some research on this. This is not about esports, this is using games. This is an article that me and a colleague from the Sami University of Applied Sciences recently published about using Minecraft with students. They use Minecraft in their practice periods, and we use a small part of our material in this article because of ethical considerations. The student group is very small, so there's quite a lot of considerations to take. But what we see is that they react differently when using games. And they might use it in different ways to reach different types of goals than my students would do. So what we see, the one thing that I was surprised about, and that my colleague was not surprised about, is the willingness to play. So my students, they're often, many of them unexperienced. They don't have a lot of gaming experience. They are terrified of playing in the classroom. And if they use games, they will stand on the side and tell their pupils, do this and do that and figure it out, and I cannot help you. This is the normal reaction for my students. But with the Sami teacher, the students there, what we saw happen is that they naturally partook in the playing. They saw it as something they should do, like being together and playing, and it had nothing to do with how experienced they were. They played together, disregarding of how much they knew from before, and they even experienced and described if they were not able to partake and play with the pupils as an obstacle. And this is in direct opposition to what the research on using games in education describes. And this playing together, it is more in line with the Sami Indigenous ways of learning, so the community. This is why I was surprised coming there as an outsider I have quite a lot of knowledge about it, but I'm still the outsider. And then my colleague, that was the insider. She expected them to play. together. And this is one thing I see here that is a huge potential for esports in Indigenous communities. Being part of a community, doing something together. It is part of creating experiences. It is part of socializing and learning. That is so vital of the way of learning that is described in the Sami literature on education. And then one might also ask, how the inclusion and exclusion of Indigenous players. So I was very interested in the presentation on Wednesday about the overrepresentation of cisgendered males. And this is the same with Indigenous peoples, and some of them, especially Sami people, I could be a Sami and you wouldn't really see it. So I might just blend in with the community. But does that mean that I am included? Not necessarily. So this is research done in an Australian context, where they have done ethnographic studies about how the players, esport players, look at themselves. So they compare it to sports, because it is quite natural to compare it, at least in this context. And they have looked at how in Australia, the sport is viewed as this being together, inclusive place, where you can redefine the way of being Australian. But are they really included, or are they being adapting to the context they are in? The last article here is about a Minecraft experience, and I think that is also quite telling about how things are included and not. This is about a project in a school. The quote, I think the title of the article is quite brilliant. It's a quote from a student in the class. So the teacher had this project. She told her class to build a colony to learn about the colonization of Australia. And one of her pupils asked them, but what about Aboriginals? She said, no, now you're doing colonization, so don't think about that. And this quote appeared. So they were not even considered a part. So they acted colonization. And for me, this shows that if we use games and esport without being even aware of what is needed, we might do this. It might be quite fatal, have really consequences that is quite embarrassing. And this is the last one, because this is, for me, something that is really important. This is probably the saddest map that I know of. Endangered and extinct languages. So there are quite a few Sami languages. When you look at the numbers, you will get different numbers. Often you would read 10, but all of them are endangered. And if you say 10, one of them is extinct. So all the Sami languages are endangered, and the different Sami languages, they are quite different. So between North and South Sami, the difference is the same as between Norwegian and German. And if you don't speak Norwegian or German, I can assure you, if somebody speaks German to me, we can't really say that much. So that means that if I use esports and gaming in a Sami context, I don't have one. I have many. But just using games in this context can be so valuable. It might be just a few people, but it might do wonders for their language use. We know that for languages to survive, for languages to be strengthened, it has to be used by young people in new domains. It is as writing, gaming, and esport, this is the solution. I mean, at least part of the solution. It could be. So having these esport line at the Sami High School and Reindeer School, they play together in Sami. They don't use the majority language. They can do that as well, but they are multilingual. These kids, they speak Norwegian, Sami, English, at least. So that means that when we do esports as well, it could be considered as an expanded educational context where language is one of the most important and valuable outcomes. And I think I am at the time. Yeah.